And joining us right now, the Rough and Orthopedics guest line from Jacob Media, from Sports Illustrated, and from Birds 365, which you can catch from 8 to 10 for the Jacob Media people. All things Johnny Mac, John McMullen. What's going on there, John?
I'm doing well. How are you, Mark?
I am doing fantastic, and I am very curious. I talked to Rob Ellis yesterday. I'd like to talk to you today. I talked to Rob about the buzz on Sports Take. I'd like to know the buzz on Birds 365 when people bring up this name.
Did
you even see my lips form the letter B, or did you just know? Did you just know it was Bijan Robinson?
I just knew. I considered changing the name of the show to Bijan 365 for the draft season. Look, they're not taking him. And by the way, Mark, I hope I'm wrong because people think I don't want them to take a running back. Number one, I don't care who they take. But number two, I would love to never have to talk about the Eagles not taking a running back moving forward. So from that perspective, I would love for them to take Bijan Robinson. They're not taking Bijan Robinson.
All right, let's pause it right there. So you would love for them to take him simply to dispel what has been the trend, or because he would be that much of an impact on the Eagles offense?
No, he's not a fit for this team because I think what people don't understand is, the impact of Jalen Hurts on the Eagles running game. What makes the Eagles so effective, and they were number one, Mark, in the NFL in rushing out of 11 personnel. So 3 receivers on the field. Number one in the entire NFL. And that's not because of Miles Sanders. It's not because of the offensive line's a big part of it. But the guy who runs it is Jalen Hurts because everybody is freaked about him pulling the football and coming out the backside. It just affects the defense. So what it's about for the Eagles is spacing and manipulating the fronts. And they want to face light fronts. So how do they do that? They put an extra receiver on the field. All of a sudden, they're effective running the football. They don't need Bijan Robinson because of Jalen Hurts. So I go all the way back to 2017. The Eagles were going to take a running back, and that was Christian McCaffrey. If he fell to 14, they were going to take him. Albert Breer reported this 5 years after the fact. So now finally, thank you, Albert Breer. Finally, people will believe it. They were going to take Christian McCaffrey. 2 things about that, Mark. It was about the passing game. Christian McCaffrey is maybe the best pass catching running back, certainly of the generation. Maybe ever. He could have played wide receiver if he wanted to. And his father was actually a tremendous receiver.
Yeah.
That's why the Eagles were interested. But even 2 things about that. It was a different offense. Carson Wentz, more traditional. With this quarterback, they wouldn't have drafted Christian McCaffrey if he could fast forward.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't be interested in it today. The reason they're not drafting Bijan Robinson is because they have Jalen Hurts. And I go back to Nick Sirianni twice. We're not taking away Jalen's superpower. That's what he's talking about it. And last week he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is basically it. We're not paying them more to do less.
Okay.
They don't want to just turn around and hand the football off. That's not what they want to do. So, no on Bijan Robinson.
Gotcha. All right. So I'll ask the question that I've asked everybody. If you are standing next to Howie Roseman and that, I'll just say this, the 10th overall pick asset rolls in. So not necessarily at 10, maybe at 8, maybe at 12, give it some leeway there, depending on if the Eagles decide to move or not. If Howie Roseman's standing next to you and he looks at you and he goes, John, I'm not really sure. What should I do here? Who do you want the Eagles to take? Who do you think would be the best fit, the best possible pick? Let's put it that way. Best possible pick for the Eagles around that 10 spot.
I think Jalen Carter would be one of the easiest picks Howie has ever made. If he somehow falls to number 10, but I do not think he will. So I think that would require Mark sort of a bit of a trade up, targeted trade up, similar to last year when he moved up for Jordan Davis. If he starts to fall a little bit, I think the Eagles would consider it. So I put him off to the side, Jalen Carter. Then you have sort of this group: Nolan Smith, Lucas Van Ness, Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson, even Christian Gonzalez, the cornerback. I think that's the group you're talking about. Now, it's funny. Every year I kind of whittle it down, and then I got one Eagle. He gave me Cam Jurgens last year. So whatever he tells me, that's who I'm picking. And I'm contacting him later today.
Okay.
Now, whoever he tells me, I'm picking. But that's the group. And every year when I whittle it down to this group, there's one guy Eagles fans hate, and that's Lucas Van Ness. For whatever reason, let's be honest, the vast majority haven't seen him play.
Mm-hmm.
But for whatever reason, Eagles love him, though. Love him. So those are the 5 names I think you should focus on: Nolan Smith, Lucas Van Ness, Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson, Christian Gonzalez.
Okay. Is it the Lucas Van Ness thing? Is it? I mean, I understand he hasn't played a lot. I understand he's young. To me, that sounds like a guy that can grow with your defense. Your defensive line can grow with your edge rushers over the course of a long period of time here. And the guy is just massive. He's a huge human being. I like him. He's not in my top 5, but he's teetering on 6-7 when it comes to a guy like him.
Well, and last week Howie didn't give up a lot, but I think you should pay attention when he was talking about age of prospects. Lucas is 21.
21, okay.
You have this COVID sort of guys playing more time. Britton Covey was 25 as a rookie. There are some older rookies now because of the pandemic. And what Howie said is, remember, you can't gauge a 21-year-old like a 25-year-old. And he mentioned, those guys are going to get faster, stronger. You get them in an NFL weight room. He mentioned 20%. Lucas Van Ness is already a physical freak, and it's only going to get better as he gets older. The Eagles know that. So put an asterisk on when he was talking about that.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Fair enough. I think it's the same could apply for guys like Christian Gonzalez, another young guy. Who else is out there? When you talk about the cornerback position, you have Devin Witherspoon, who's also a young guy.
Yeah.
Another young guy. Yeah.
Now, it's interesting. Corner's an interesting one to me from the perspective of they don't need a corner right now.
Right.
But Slay is 32. The contract issues they had already. Bradbury's going to turn 30. And that's kind of like the Eagles have been pretty smart when it's not just about this draft. It's about, 2024, 2025. But boy, at 10, can you really take a guy who's not going to play? Because
right.
Barring injury, he's not going to play if Christian Gonzalez falls. But if he falls and he's the best player, I do think they would take him. I do think. I don't think they'd take Witherspoon.
Okay.
Gonzalez, yes. All
right. Now, I've asked everyone this question as well. Do the Eagles pick? Do they make 2 first-round selections on Thursday night? Are they going to be using that 30th pick?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Go back to last year. They had 3 first-round picks. They took 1, and it wasn't at the spot it originally was going to be. They moved up to draft Jordan Davis. They moved out of the first round because they were still concerned about Jalen Hurts, as funny as that sounds right now. And they traded for A.J. Brown. Howie likes to move And he's got that big donut, Mark. On Saturday, we're all going to be sitting there. We can show up 4 hours late as it stands now because they have nothing in the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. I don't think he can sit that long. He wants to add picks, and the most logical way would be to drop down from 30, which I think he would like to do. Most teams have 15 to 20 real first round grades. So if you're sitting at 30, you could probably get the similar player. If you can drop down to say 35, 37, even 40 and get something extra, it probably makes some sense.
We listened to Jalen Hurts now 2 days ago address the media. You were there at the press conference. He was there with his inner circle. A lot of Eagles receivers were there. Nick Sirianni obviously on hand. I can't help but feel like this, John, and man, I feel like such a fanboy when I say it, but damn, I feel like the Eagles are in great hands with Jalen Hurts for the foreseeable future. Not just what we saw on the field, which is the most important, but this guy just seems so well put together. And you hear Jeff Lurie talk about it all the time. He's shocked the guy's 24 years old. He's very much wise beyond his years. I mean, really, how confident and how bright are you in this Eagles future?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking about this. What struck me is how confident everybody is about, giving $250 million to a 24-year-old. And I agree with them. Like, I don't even worry about it. If you give it to me, I'd be going nuts. And I'm kind of mature. But yeah. I mean, it's pretty amazing just how mature and how focused he is. It's rare. I was just talking to Mike Sealski. He wrote the book on Kobe Bryant. I always say, don't practice hero worship, whether it's a politician, a celebrity, a sports star, Mark Barzetta, you're going to be disappointed. John McMullen, you're going to be disappointed. We're all human beings. And so is Jalen. And, he's got the Gucci suit and he's going to spend some money and he's going to enjoy himself. But he's so focused. He's so disciplined. Jeffrey Lurie's the one doing it. And he doesn't seem worried about it. And I can't disagree with him. And that's the biggest compliment I can give to Jalen Hurts. It's not going to change him. I'm pretty confident in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just something about him that it makes me. I'm buying. Let's put it this way. That's the easiest way I can put it. Is I'm buying. Whatever he's selling, I'm buying. I got a lot of confidence in him and the Eagles' future with him at the helm. One more thing on the draft here, John. You mentioned a couple of names there. Skoronski is, I think, the guy that a lot of people would look at and go like, well, not a sexy pick, but at least I mean, I get it. He's an offensive lineman. He'll play for years. And with Stoutland University, he'll play for years and all that stuff. And he'll play at a very high level. I get that. The cornerback situation, as you laid out, it's not a sexy pick either because he doesn't play right away if he ends up getting picked here. What's your confidence level in the Eagles doing something that will be a big splash on Thursday night, whether that be a trade for a proven commodity, a player now like they did with A.J. Brown last year, or what is it that they'll make a big splash with by making a selection? Will this be something that we look at and are wowed by with what Howie does in this first round?
It's a good question. I can't believe they're going to go into the season with Reed Blankenship and Terrell Edmonds and Nicholas Morrow and Nakobe Dean. They have to add talent at those positions, but they're not positions where you're going to have first-round picks in. That could indicate trade somewhere along the line. So I never say never when it comes to splash. He's not going to acquire Devin White. He's not going to acquire Derrick Henry.
Buda Baker's
the obvious. I brought up typically when I call it the big name trap. I got that from Joe Banner, so I'll give him the credit. But typically when you give me the big name trap, I say no 97% of the time. Buddha, I was like, I would think about that because he's a top 5 safety in football. So he's sort of like AJ Brown at his position. Problem is the defense the Eagles play. Like Buddha's a versatile sort of Malcolm Jenkins like safety, moves all over the place. In theory, Mark, the Eagles don't want that now. They want the covered safety, the Vic Fangio. They don't want that moving part. So I don't necessarily see it as a fit. But then I come back to, look, if you can't, if you think you game the system and you can't use Buda Baker, well, you got a problem with your coaching staff. You got to change your philosophy. So would I do it? Yes. Would the Eagles do it? I don't know.
All right. I'll write that down as a maybe. All right. Last thing I'll ask you here. Have you cracked the code yet on Sean Desai? I'm trying to figure out what exactly everyone's talking about. It's going to be just like Jonathan Gannon, same philosophy. That's what the Eagles want to do. What are you expecting to see from Sean Desai and whatever defense the Eagles do give him in terms of the personnel going into the next season?
Yeah, same defense, same philosophy, I should say. If anything, Jonathan Gannon is further removed from Vic Fangio than Sean Desai. Sean Desai is an actual Vic Fangio disciple. I mean, he coached under him. He was his right-hand man at one point. Jonathan Gannon's just, like Brandon Staley, who liked the defense, who coached with Vic Fangio. So he was sort of like too removed. Yeah, they're gonna run the same philosophy. Now, it's very similar to the offense if you think about it from the change in play caller from Nick Sirianni to Shane Steichen. It's always going to be a little bit different, but it's the same philosophy. Maybe Sean's better at situations. Let's be honest. Shane Steichen's a better play caller than Nick Sirianni. I'm sorry, Nick. He's a better play caller. He was a better play. Same offense. He's a better play caller. Maybe in the moment, Sean Desai's better on 3rd and 13. He likes to overload one side a little bit more. Maybe that looks better, especially if you get Nolan Smith, say. Could you imagine overloading Hassan Reddick and Nolan Smith on one side? People would love that. But same philosophy, limit explosive plays, keep everything in front of you. It's not changing. I'm sorry, people.
Hey, were you part of the faction that got together for that news conference where you all told Jonathan Gannon you wanted to fire him? Because that was mean, John. You media people shouldn't have done that.
I was talking to somebody at the Eagles about that. We both, I think it was conflating.
Yeah.
Angelo, your old buddy Angelo.
People, I've heard that guy.
Talk and bands with. And I said, yeah, he was. And certain people got upset about it. I didn't get upset about it, but you can't do that as a head coach. You can't embellish. You can't. And that's what he was doing. He was embellishing. He was, you were never 9-0. You were 8-1. You certainly weren't plus 30 in sacks in the 10th game of the season. He led the NFL. All the things he did were impressive, right? He had the number 2 defense. He led the NFL in sacks. Just say that. Don't embellish. But yeah, I mean, he wasn't talking about us, obviously. And the guy I was talking to said he liked us, the beat guys. But he heard what it tells me, Mark, is he heard the criticism. And he heard the people calling for his job, and he was pissed off about it. And every once in a while, you got to see it. Hassan Reddick, my favorite Jonathan Gannon moment, and people know I got along with Jonathan, but My favorite JG moment was he was talking about Hassan Reddick, and he's having this great year, and it was late in the season. And he said, boy, if I didn't drop him so much, he'd probably have 25 sacks. And that was kind of a dig at the people criticizing him.
Mm-hmm.
He never dropped less in his career. And he knew that. But nobody else knew that. Not some of us did.
Let me understand something. Hassan Reddick had never dropped into coverage less than he did last year.
Yeah.
That was a career low, the amount of times he was dropped back into coverage.
Career low.
I did not know that.
Yes.
I am surprised to learn that.
Career low.
I would have thought it was the opposite, career high.
And he was tweaking people a little bit, saying, because that was the narrative.
Wow.
And he had never dropped less in his career, and obviously had a career year. Look, he was here for 2 years. I was fair to him when he was here. I'll be fair to him now. He had 2 top 10 defenses. I think Jim Johnson had 2 or 3 in his entire career here. He had 2 in 2 years, but it's a different era of football. And I think the Eagles fans who don't like it just don't understand the changes in the game, to be honest. I mean, in this era, with all the teams, and I think there were 12 teams that played the Fangio style defense last year, too many. The Eagles did it the best. They did it the best, but they came up. The only difference between 2017 and last year was 1 stop, Brandon Graham. If they get the 1 stop this year, the whole narrative changes.
Yeah. I was waiting for that 1 stop in the Super Bowl. I'll tell you that much. John, I know you're a big basketball fan. Let me just close with this. Will the Sixers get past the Celtics? Will it happen? Will it happen? Please. No. Oh,
I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize.
That team owns them to begin with. And I don't even know if Joel, that scares me. I mean, the way they're talking about Joel Embiid, I mean, they have no shot without Joel. But I don't think they have much of a shot with them, to be honest. Boy, I mean, and I know we got to go, but Jason Tatum, Markelle Fultz, boy.
I don't care what anybody says. I really don't. Like, Jason Tatum was never available.
Yeah.
1 comes before, 2, and 1 comes before 3.
And they're probably right. And they're probably right, by the way.
Yeah, maybe.
But I look at that. You think about what could have been force Boston to do it. Who knows? Maybe they're not comfortable, because Fultz was the guy, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't comfortable, which is kind of why they did it. And I look at, Jimmy Butler, as we're taping this last night, giving the team to the children, I like to call it, instead of Jimmy Butler. That was a mistake. Bridges, trading him. What could have been, Mark?
What could have been. John McMullen, thank you so much. Check him out, Birds 365 on Jacob Media, following this program at 8 o'clock. So make sure you guys check that out. Read everything he does on Philly Voice. Read everything he does with Sports Illustrated. It's fantastic. John, you're doing a fantastic job, and I hope to talk to you later this week through the Jacob Media people when we do our draft show on Thursday.
Looking forward to it, Mark.
The great John McMullen joining us on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line.